The second time around, April 2008.
During this time, there was a meeting in a rented hall for all the employees of Toland's Toy Company. Mr. Daly was especially interested since he barely had any money left after saving all he could for a college education for his children. He was hoping for some relief. Maybe a union could force Mr. Toland to bring employee-supported health care that the employees never had. Maybe Toland's Toy Company could be persuaded to provide child care for its employees so parents could be free to find employment to help the family finances. Mr. Daly was interested to hear that Toland's was making tremendous profits. Some of the profits went back into the company for research and development, upgrading the facility, buying more modern equipment. But this was all accounted for in the profit numbers. No one wanted to give money back to the worker. That was just not practical. Mr. Daly was hoping the company would support a retirement program for its workers. If Toland's would contribute just an extra 1 or 2%, for this purpose, Mr. Daly could free up some of his income for other things the family really needed but continued to do without. When Mr. Toland heard about the union meeting, he became intrigued.
I think it's about time we provided our faithful and loyal workers with some health insurance,
Mr. Toland announced at his stockholders' meeting. Everyone was shocked, since Mr. Toland had always been so vehemently opposed to providing health insurance.
This will eat into profits,
Many people of the executive board said.
It's the right thing to do,
said Mr. Toland.
Could you afford health insurance on your own?
Since Mr. Toland owned a majority of the company's stock, the new practice began almost immediately.
Also,
said Mr. Toland,
we will be giving all workers a 7% raise in the form of a tax-sheltered annuity. An amount equal to 7% of everyone's salary will be placed into an account for the employees. This money may be withdrawn upon retirement or separation.
And with that, most of the workers were able to keep more of their regular salary for other things.
Finally,
continued Mr. Toland,
we will convert one of our old manufacturing spaces into a brand new, beautiful child care center. Any Toland employee may use this center free of charge.
Every working family with children immediately reaped the benefit of saving a substantial amount of money that previously went toward child care. The day after Mr. Toland announced to his stockholders, he instructed all his employees to assemble in Toland's Grand Hall. All the employees cheered Mr. Toland, and he felt a warm feeling of happiness he never experienced. He also announced that the following day he was providing a free clinic for all employees and their children for the purpose of a health screening and vaccinations. After the meeting, he made a special point of approaching Mr. Daly.
Thomas, I happen to know from my position on the school board that your 2 children have never completed their childhood vaccinations. I expect to see them both at the clinic tomorrow.
Mr. Daly shook his boss's hand and said,
Of course, sir.
The next day, Mr. Toland observed the activity resulting from his free clinic. He was pleased to see Ellis Daly receive his shots. He looked at Angela, and with a wry little knowing smile nodded satisfaction that was felt by both. The clinician scheduled all follow-up shots and treatment resulting from the free clinic with the employees' respective doctors. All future shots and treatment were now covered by health care. Another unexpected benefit resulted from Mr. Toland's new attitude. His workers became more productive than he ever found by using threats and intimidation. The word got around that Toland's Toy Factory was a caring place to work. The image of the company improved, sales went up, production went up, and profits were never higher. Mr. Toland took this opportunity to meet with Angela. He wanted to know if she felt these changes would make a difference in the lives of their families and the other workers. She assured him that it would.
"Do you think what happened here will save Ellis?"
Asked Mr. Toland.
I know it will.
Said Angela.
Also, I know that my father will save Edward's life. His bitterness that I have known is completely gone. We must believe this because, as I told you, on May 8th, neither of us will remember what happened.
Mr. Toland said.
"I still do not understand how this happened, but I do know that I suffered unbearable grief by losing Edward. I also know that Edward is here now, and that unless we change the events that caused his drowning, our families will suffer again. Since we only have a few more days before we both forget, I only hope it is enough. I know now there is a force in the world more powerful than anything I ever imagined. I only hope this power will keep possession of me after May 8th.
Angela said.
My faith tells me it will, Mr. Toland.
November 2009 through January 2010, the second time around.
Ellis, now nearly 10 years old, was a typical fifth grader. Ellis had his fair share of childhood diseases, but he always was able to ward off any serious illness. Since Toland's Toy Company controlled the valley and everything there, including the school system, it recently required all students to have their immunizations up to date. The school nurse was charged with the responsibility of checking every child's medical record. If the cost of an immunization was an issue, whether the child's parents worked at Toland's Toy Company or not, free immunizations were provided by Toland's. Mr. Daly felt compelled to see Mr. Toland about his change in policy. Invited into Mr. Toland's office, Mr. Daly proceeded to thank Mr. Toland. By this time, both Angela and Mr. Toland had lost all recollection of events that already happened. Mr. Toland received Mr. Daly not remembering or knowing that in several weeks hence, Mr. Daly will be present when Edward falls through the ice while skating.
Mr. Toland, I wanted to thank you for changing your policy about providing your workers with health insurance and other benefits. It certainly has made a difference in our lives. I know I should have thanked you months ago, but honestly, I never thought you would keep your policy changes.
Thomas, if we're going to be honest with each other, I cannot even remember what prompted me to change myself. You know that I have always felt that a man should provide for his own family. I never believed that I should be paying for your child's insurance premium or for your retirement or for your child care. What possessed me to change has confounded me for months. But you know what? It turned out to be a good move. We are still making plenty of money for everyone here in our Toland family. If our workers are happy, they make a better product and take pride in their work. And then I got to thinking, why should I be making all this money and not sharing it with the people who made me what I am? Thomas, you know I could never replace a man like you with another warm body. It's better to share the wealth and have a loyal workforce. And guess what? I discovered that it's just the right darn thing to do. When we stop caring for our neighbor and only think of ourselves, that's when we become lost in the world. If it feels right, then it probably is right. Before, I always did things that felt wrong. I thought my actions would make me richer. Now I finally learned how to become a rich man, just as you are, Thomas."
Mr. Daly shook Mr. Toland's hand and left. Mr. Toland could not help feeling that he and Thomas had some kind of connection. He figured that it must be because Thomas Daly worked there for many years, and he left it at that.